Welcome to the gun show. I'm newly vaccinated, and people have been debating something very serious. What's your vaccine pose gonna be? People have apparently been flexing to show off their guns. My mom and I had a fight about that. She thought that I was deliberately flexing. That's just how fucking strong I am. That's my muscle there. That's my deltoid muscle. But my biceps and triceps are obviously very fit. I essentially followed my normal dance pattern, and today I'll be in full swing, 2 hours, half an hour of strength yoga, including all of my calisthenics. So I feel good. The only thing I had was some slight muscle soreness. Some Marines online were posting that maybe the way to circumvent all of those types of effects is to drop down and give them 20. Some of them essentially were dropping down right after the injection and pushing out 20 military-style push-ups. I had some documentation questions to ask, so I used my time up to do that, because I'm anticipating that we're probably going to have to travel differently than what we've been used to. But as an adventure traveler, I'm actually used to the enhanced requirements. For example, are you even an adventure traveler without having the yellow fever vaccine? Yellow fever is what some sub-Saharan African countries require for entry, some South American countries. So that's something I took abroad because it's much cheaper. In Canada, that's the type of vaccine you have to pay out of pocket. The government will cover all of your basic vaccinations. Those are ones that you would need for daily life in Canada. But there are many vaccines that the adventure traveler has to top up on at their own expense. So what I often do is I top up on those abroad in countries that have still good medical facilities. For example, my yellow fever vaccine is from the Philippines at about 5% to 10% the cost of the one in Canada. The reason why the vaccines in the Philippines are okay, especially for the yellow fever one, is that Philippines as a country provides many cruise ship workers. They all have to be vaccinated to work abroad. So they basically run a daily clinic, and it's just as simple as walking in, paying your nominal fee. They provide an international certificate of vaccination. Maybe next time I can showcase that. But that's the name of the drill. Some countries had also required the meningococcal ACYW, like Saudi Arabia. But now that Saudis opened the country up to travel, maybe their requirements have changed. They basically just opened things up to travel around the end of 2019. Before that, they required the meningococcal ACYW for Hajj, which is the major pilgrimage for Muslims at the Mecca, the city of Mecca, Saudi. So I'd considered trying to top up on that abroad. But if I were to make a recommendation, I'd recommend that you do it all in Thailand. Thailand has easy and cheap access to all of them. I think one of the institutions is the Red Cross, right near the snake farm. I would have done it myself, except Thailand was the first country on my Southeast Asia loop. So I decided to wait till the end in the Philippines. By then I only had time for one, but I would have done more if I could. I think at the time, the meningococcal ACYW, they had some stalking issues. Otherwise I would have done that one as well. It's just a fun thing that I have, because actually loading up abroad makes sense. For example, anti-malaria pills, malaria test kits are much more readily available in Africa. So I bought some extras while I was in sub-Saharan Africa, because the access to these in Canada is limited, and I'd rather just buy them where they're there. In Africa also, they have some very exotic tropical diseases, like one that you apparently have to pill up to swim in Lake Malawi. I have that pill on me. I swam in Lake Malawi. Apparently that's one of those things where it depends on who you ask, but I have extras of that on me in case I, for some reason, would need it suddenly. I also have Doxy, which is the anti-malarial I took in sub-Saharan Africa. And I responded really well to Doxy. Doxy is doxycycline. Doxycycline is actually used for a wide variety of different ailments, including acne clear-up. So I have my stockpile of stuffs on me, always ready to go at a moment's notice. Even during this pandemic, my mindset has always been, be ready for adventure. That leads into my headline title, 193 countries or space. Which one first? I'm working diligently to have opportunities for both, and maybe I'm just being the ever optimist, but I actually think space might be easier than 193 countries. For whatever reason too, I'm actually more excited for space than I am for 193 countries, because I think that logistically, who knows how that's going to work in the new world. I mean, both have their share of logistic challenges, but I think space is actually further along than 193 countries. In fact, some of the recent record holders who've been fastest and youngest to travel to all 193 UN countries probably have safe world records for the time being, because world travel has been a difficult nightmare for people who have chosen to undertake it during the pandemic. Of course, it's doable at extreme cost, at extreme extra steps. So people have to really weigh the risks and rewards of doing that. For me in particular, since I think I've traveled to all of my dream marquee countries already, I can actually refocus on space, which is a completely different frontier. What are some of the marquee countries that I'd consider? Sub-Saharan Africa, for all the animal safaris, the big five: lions, leopards, elephants, rhinos, and buffalo. What else? Penguins in Antarctica. What else? some of the ancient wonders of the world. Egypt, Jordan, Petra. What else? Every time someone asks me what are my favorite countries that I've visited of the 101 that I've visited, I'll have a different answer each time. But wild animal encounters are usually at the top of the list. Sub-Saharan Africa for me was essentially almost all wild animal encounters. Of course, in between we had natural wonders of the world like Victoria Falls. In fact, I think that Victoria Falls is one of my favorite waterfalls of all the ones I've visited in the world, including Iceland, the country of waterfalls. Vic Falls is a highlight because there's something very visceral about walking so far away from the falls yet being doused by the spray and mist. It's very cooling for Sub-Saharan Africa's usually scorching temperatures. It's a welcome reprieve. But it's actually difficult to film there, and all of my Vic Falls footage has a really mystical fog frame inside the camera. I filmed with a partially waterproof, water-resistant, somewhere between their camera. And that's the same camera I used with the 50x zoom for the wild animal encounters. I'm laughing at some of the fake animals I have. The Australian one. So Australia, I'll throw that one in there. I designed it that way. I had a dual approach, cheap and good, and I just slowly made my way around the world over 8 years, following deals and following interests, and a lot of the times they coincided really well. In fact, one of the adventure feather caps, Antarctica, was something I actually undertook some risk. So back then was another deadly disease, Ebola, making its way across the oceans to the US and Texas. People actually freaked the fuck out and canceled as far away as Antarctica, and I picked up a cheap cruise for less than 5% of the cost. So that's what I mean by being flexible and nimble. I actually have a very high risk tolerance. I'll travel when other people cancel, but the difference between that and this current pandemic situation is manifold, and maybe something that I'll delve into some other time. But suffice to explain that the differences abounded. First of all, actually, let's discuss it. Cost. Cost is the major thing. I like to live the billionaire playboy lifestyle without having $1 billion. In fact, I like to do it as a thousandaire. That's my goal. If you have to spend like a billionaire, that would never be my game. But I think I'm especially proud of the fact that I've done everything that I've done as an adventurer on a budget, because how compelling is it if you're rich and you just throw money at a problem? The real adventure is if you're normal and you've still made it happen despite all of the monetary challenges. So, now that I've talked my way into oblivion again, I'm gonna throw down some dance moves. I think I've reestablished my new schedule of dance, and I'm already well into choreographing my next pop song. It's a little bit of a dry run through of all of my breaking top rock moves strung together in one pattern. I'm actually testing how I operate without counting out loud, because eventually the whole point is to be able to count in your head to a new song that you've heard just for the first time right then and there. That's been something in reviewing tape that I've struggled with quite a lot, because probably I'm just trying to mash too many things together. I'm confident with top rocking now, but I think that confidence is tested when I combine it with the challenge of listening to a new song for the first time and then choreographing a complicated beat pattern with that. So I think what I've noticed is that many times when I've been breaking, I'm off beat, and I'm also very picky about that, because what I do is I slow everything down to 0.25 speed and I count. Sometimes I've even had to double check with the metronome, the tick, 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 tick. Yes, because that's part of the accuracy for me. Oftentimes when I'm dancing, I'm actually looking at my feet because I'm lucky. This floor setup is my favorite. Obviously, we have beams running down this way, but I also have beams running down this way that I can see through the cracks. So basically, I have a floor that's demarcated for me to aim my feet. The hope is that if I ever do have to look up, which I probably will start doing more, I'll have muscle memory as to the accurate foot placement. Obviously, in the learning phase and even in the testing phase right now, I'm picky on everything as a package. My counting, my foot placement, my speed, my execution, because this is the time to perfect things while we're still in a form of lockdown. But eventually, if I am to dance out in public like breakdancers do, I have to take away all of the helping aids that I've had, including, again, this perfectly demarcated dance floor. I've also danced in other places without those helpful aids, and I've been able to do it well. I functioned, but I guess for me, this is my party and I'll run it the way I want to. It's my party and I'll cry if I want to. So, again, my hair is actually looking a lot like a faux hawk. This is the hairstyle I actually aimed for when I was younger, and now that I have it, I find it a bit of a pain, because with the fully shaved head, I'm so used to being completely free. Yes, even though this hair, about 2 inches in length, is a drag now that I've had the fully shaved head a couple of times, that's a far cry from even just about 2 years ago when I had hair, long hair up to my butt that I often braided to the side. I think especially during this intensive dance year that I've had, the less the better, at least for me, because even in Canada, summers are hot and the hotness is starting already. The hotness is starting so much that I've actually even wanted to plan out a dive schedule for myself for the summer to take advantage of the weather. But again, diving seems to be my nemesis. There's always so many things I have to do to be prepared. Most of the local dive trips, if they're going at all, are for advanced PADI divers. I am only an open water PADI diver, I would have to study a separate course to be able to qualify for any of the trips worthwhile. That is a drag. The other trips are still worthwhile, but they're the ones that I already participated in for my ocean dives during testing. So I would prefer exploring new terrain. The new terrain is much more difficult. In fact, all of the diving that I've come across while adventure traveling has been of the adventure diving sort. So even if I had an open water license, I would have had to have the advanced license to do anything worthwhile. For example, Belize has blue hole diving. Iceland has continental fissure diving. Both of them require advanced PADI licensing. So maybe you just have to be gentle with yourself and meet yourself at the pace that you're at. The reason why space is different now is because in suborbital, which is what might be the opportunity I pursue, you basically just have to be of reasonable fitness. Of course, people are thinking of astronaut level fitness and astronaut level intelligence, which is basically 1 in a million, 1 in 10 million, but I'm really speaking of standards that are significantly more realistic for the average person. That's why they're opening suborbital space, because that's their hope. But still, I think for me, scuba diving still represents a good overall training for a number of things. First, it's adventurous. Second, it has animals often. Third, it's training. So for astronauts that do eventually venture out into orbital space, they usually do specific scuba training at NASA's facility or other facilities around the world. It's just the way it is. So I do like diving, I just struggle with it. I guess that's with any activity that's worthwhile. Nothing comes like this, even dancing. That has its challenges, so that's just something that you accept as part of the adventure lifestyle. And I mention the mentality aspect of the game because I think that's actually the most important. So if you're able to regulate your emotions, you're much more able to react to an emergency situation in the water, which is the situation that I'm panicked about. Because during my ocean dives, I actually made what could have been a fatal error, and that's something that I've had to think about and contend with. If anything, this actually reminds me I should start visualizing the scenario that I was in, because I recorded it on my action cam, and I should just replay it in my head and work out what the new response I have would be. That's how you learn from your mistakes. You can visualize the situation and solve it differently this time. So that's what I'm going to do. That's a note to myself.